saw the world's oldest basketball court and all the good work we were doing, they thought it was actually a natural fit to house that. And it's fantastic for us because people do want to see the world's oldest basketball court, but to have a Hall of Fame creates even a more interesting destination for people.
But because of that, we're able to make a donation to the Open Door food program of $7,000. And it really aligns sort of with our larger Invest, our ownership group. It's a big focus of ours supporting food insecurity across Canada. So in every community we're in, we do our very best to come to the table, so to speak, and support our community.
Welcome to This Week Uncut, where we take a look at the week's top stories from CHCO-TV and the Courier. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth. We begin this week in St. Andrews with the evolution of the timeline of the Wharf project and why there are two different timelines.
That's right. This was part of the Right to Information and Protection of Privacy Act request that I would have mentioned in several episodes. It yielded a lot of information and certainly a lot of documents. There are hundreds of documents to sort of sift through and read, and you have to take your time with these kinds of things. And so I wanted to start with the most immediate information that was new to everybody, which was when we uncovered the discrepancy between the March 2026 deadline that had been shared by the staff of the town of St. Andrews, and then the contradicted deadline by the federal and provincial government.
Okay, and that's for anyone back home. We are going back to last 2025 when this became a topic that I think a lot of people in the community were following very closely.
Exactly. So that's where we're going to start, because I feel like there's a lot of dates, there's a lot of things that have happened, and that can get a bit confusing. But we sort of started to see the community push back on this project a little bit. And the timing of my arrival sort of coincided with that. So I've sort of jumped in on this story, really in the last 25% of it, because they've been talking about it since 2017, 2018. And we were I think in June of 2025, and I'm going to refer to my notes as much as possible because I want to make sure that everything that I say is true to the documents. In June of 2025, council was told by the former town clerk, Paul Nopper, that if they didn't use the money by March 2026, they would lose it. It was gone, and that they had been told that information. And by being told that information, they're indicating the provincial government, because how this works is the funding is through the integrated bilateral agreement, through the green infrastructure stream, and that money is then funneled down to the Regional Development Corporation, who administers it on behalf of the integrated bilateral agreement. And those are all signed and documented, and all of that is worked out over time. And so I sort of sat on the deadline for a little while because I sort of was still learning about what was going on, and then I decided to ask. I said, is there any flex? Because it was a question that Councillor Annette Harland had brought up during a council meeting. Is there any flexibility? Do we have any more time? And so I went to the federal and provincial government, and that's when both other levels of government contradicted the deadline that we had been told. The federal government said, we've not imposed any deadlines on to the town of St. Andrews, apart from it needing to be substantially completed by October of 2033, which is the end of the bilateral agreement. And then the provincial government said, no, March 2027, not March 2026. I want to be really clear. It is my understanding that the deadline has evolved over time.
Right.
In 2019, it would have been a different deadline. And even up until a certain amount of time, it was March 2026. But this is where I
was going to say, I think anyone who was at, and it was a very packed meeting, I'm seeing June 2025, this would have been former Mayor Henderson's last meeting as mayor. And I think a lot of us recall that meeting. Paul Nopper, the former town clerk, who's now the CAO in Lunenburg in Nova Scotia, I remember him that meeting saying, very stressed out, saying the deadline is spring 2026. He was the one who voiced that actual deadline at that meeting. I know Mayor Henderson in that meeting said, I don't gamble with millions of dollars, also alluding to the fact that this deadline was on the horizon next year. So the public, and this is why I'm stressing this to anyone watching at home, if maybe you're watching in a different community and just need to be illuminated about what was going on at the time, it was very much public information at the time that the deadline was going to be the next spring to get started on the wharf project. And had that date not been met, these funds would not be granted from the different levels of government. So that was sort of the backstory on that. But now, as you've uncovered, 2 different deadlines. What do you make of that, and how this happened? And yes, bring people up to speed on why we have these 2 very different timelines.
Well, that's exactly the question. How? How did we get 2 different deadlines? How was one level of government saying this, and how were 2 other levels of government saying something else? And so that's where the Right to Information Protection of Privacy Act came into play. And so I sort of sat with this information. I read through the documents, I read through the letters, the emails, and I sort of sat with it for a little bit, and I sort of tried to work out the timeline as best as I could. And what I did determine was that there was an application to the Regional Development Corporation in the form of a letter from the town of St. Andrews from Chief Administrative Officer Chris Spear, asking to not only add an additional $1.5 to $2 million, I believe, to the funding amount, but also to extend that deadline until March of 2027, the funding deadline until March 2027.
And when was that letter sent to the province?
In November of 2024.
Okay.
So well in advance of the meeting where we heard that 2026 was the drop dead date. Mm-hmm. So that sort of raised some questions for me. And so as I was going through, 6 days later, that extension was granted. And the reason he asked for that extra money and the funding was because the Department of Fisheries and Oceans had identified that the project needed remediation. So when you do projects that involve the environment, if it results in some sort of harm to the environment or the species that live in that environment, you must remediate and provide credit for that project. And so the Department of Fisheries and Oceans had identified that. They had then matched them with the Passamaquoddy Recognition Group, and in that letter it said that the projects that they had identified were too cost prohibitive for the municipality. And we're not going to discuss how that sort of evolved until a little bit later, because that is a separate story. But essentially they said it's too cost prohibitive. Given that, can you give us another $1 million to this project? They denied that part of the request simply because the funds had already been allocated, and it was sort of, there was no wiggle room. This is what your project has been given, and there's no more left for us to give you.
But the extension was granted.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, in November 2024. So obviously my first step was to go to Paul Knopper, who was the individual who said in that meeting, March 2026 or you lose it.
Who's now in Lunenburg.
Right. And this is part of journalistic due diligence. I went to him to ask him why he said those things, and in order to clarify, this is not an accusation. I'm offering him the opportunity to respond to now information that we have that is contradictory to what he said. And then I reached out to the Chief Administrative Officer because it was his letter, his signature, those emails went to him. And he made the claim that he was pressured by the Regional Development Corporation to identify the years of funding for this project. So essentially claiming that RDC is pressuring them to progress the project forward.
Is there any idea of why pressure might be put on a municipality to move ahead? Does it have to do with securing the funding, or maybe just the fear that, this funding might get lost if we don't get action underway?
Sure. I mean, I think that's a really difficult question, but I will read you the quote that was given to me. The province gets a pool of funding for multiple projects on an annual basis. From what I understand, and the I in this context is Chris Spear, those funds did not roll over. Our earlier applications had been spent in certain years prior to even 2025. And then he'll go on to say that RDC had told him that they had identified other projects that the money could be used for. So you could imagine why that would make you think, okay, I don't really have as much time as I thought I had. He also said that he had never been told that the federal deadline had been extended either, and so he was operating under the understanding that 2027 was the drop dead date for the whole integrated bilateral agreement. But we now know that that is also not true, and he now knows that that is also not true. So he said, it was my understanding that the 2027 deadline was the last year for the national program, not just our project as originally indicated in our correspondence from them in February 27th, 2021. Nor was it the extended federal deadline informally mentioned to me in the various meetings with the funding partners. So I continued to interpret that we needed to stay within the timeline of 2027 to maintain our funding.
Okay, so when we look at the federal deadline, 2033 though, is quite far off. So what was the original idea of what the federal deadline was? I think I was under the impression that was always 2033.
Well, again, different iterations of this integrated bilateral agreement exist, and I haven't been able to track them all down. But I do know that deadlines have changed over time.
Okay.
Right. This started in 2019, and since then we've had 2 Liberal governments. Now we have a new Liberal government, and so things have changed. Priorities have changed, and so the deadlines have changed through time.
This is federally, yes. Okay.
Federally, provincially, all of the deadlines have changed over time. But it's sort of not clear when those changes happened. But what is clear is that there was an application made in November of 2024 to extend St. Andrew's Market Wharf refurbishment project funding deadline to March of 2027, despite in June of 2025 asserting there was no flexibility for that.
Okay, well, interesting, because that is quite a time difference. When you know that deadline request was granted in 2024. What do you make of this? And when you're looking at putting this in layman's terms, how do you describe the scenario to residents?
Yeah, so I think you have to read the story. I think take your time, read through it. I did a graphic, which I'm sure we can pull up for you, that shows sort of the Cliff Notes version of how we arrived here. And I think this project is complicated. This is a large-scale infrastructure project that will determine the future of Market Wharf and Market Square, a very centralized location for the town of St. Andrews, an extensive tourism attraction, not only for the structure itself, but also whale watching, tourism-related businesses, all of that other stuff. So we're sort of at the point now where we have to, look at the Regional Development Corporation and say, okay, they're making this claim. What is your response to this claim?
Right.
And so the Regional Development Corporation, in a statement to me, did not address the claims directly made by the town of St. Andrews. They did not identify to me whether or not they had told them that there were projects that they wanted to reallocate this money to. What they did say is the Regional Development Corporation routinely asks funding recipients, including the town of St. Andrews, for cash flow updates as part of the financial management of our funding programs. So
it could be the interpretation of pressure, just being asked maybe. I think maybe for a small community could be the assumption that it could be moved somewhere else. I'm just reading into it.
This is a high pressure project.
Yeah.
I think this is a high pressure project, but when you think about the integrated bilateral agreement, it's not the only high pressure project, and which leads me to the next segment of this story, which is that the project is on the provincial radar. It is. It's come up in 2 separate fiscal updates, and we're talking about multiple projects: the Rossay wastewater project, the Mount Allison University rehabilitation project, the UNB law building, which is the old courthouse. So once the old courthouse moves into the new courthouse, UNB will be taking over that building, but it needs, I think, double-digit investment in that building, but it's $88 million in funding. And so when projects don't move forward, the province not only doesn't get it in revenue, but it takes it as a loss on the expense side. So the special operating agency has sort of been impacted on both the expense side and the revenue side, and I don't think it's any secret that the province is in a very difficult financial situation. $1.3 billion deficit. The budget will drop next week, and so it has come up, and it has been identified as a project that is causing a bit of a shortfall. Now, $88 million is a bit of a drop in the bucket when you think about $1.3 billion, but I did ask the finance minister, I said, is there any flexibility that you have to sort of meet proponents in general in the middle to start identifying why these projects have been delayed, largely due to cost escalation, right? We're thinking about materials, building, construction costs, labor costs, all of that other stuff. And he said, we're not in a position to make up for federal shortfalls.
Okay, I'm going to ask something, though, that I think viewers at home, anyone who's been following this really closely is probably considering right now when they have this information now, is that when we look back on last year, though, so many decisions were made with the idea of the 2026 deadline in mind. And as we all know now that, you know, they went to tender with that work project regardless of pushback, and it was over tender. So they didn't end up going forward with the wharf project. But nevertheless, a lot of decisions were made along the way with a certain deadline in mind. What does that mean?
Well, it doesn't mean anything now.
Okay.
The tender has been canceled because it was a little more than $2 million over budget. The council has decided, you know, they had to go back to the drawing board, right?
Right.
It's too expensive. They can't afford it. So now they've gone to Fundy Engineering, as I think we discussed in a previous episode, who provided a very comprehensive structural report on the wharf and provided them with cost estimates for the work that needs to be done right now. And that is the head of the wharf and the inner approach. And they're going to bring back architectural renderings, which was notably absent from that first design. We saw engineered drawings, but we didn't see architectural drawings of what things would look like. So that was notably absent the first time. It's not going to be absent this time.
But then again, my point comes back. Was that a problem of the deadline seeming too close? Like, if we had known about that deadline, would there have been more time? Did council know about the deadline back then, or were they thinking still 2026? These are questions I have now.
Of course, and they're questions probably the public has. The documents don't tell us the why. They just tell us the timeline, they tell us what was asked for and who asked for it, but the why is a question that constituents should ask their elected representatives. You should go to your councillor, you should go to the acting mayor and ask these questions. That is your right, but the why will always be the question that I, as a journalist, typically are looking for, but will probably never get. But the Fundy Engineering project does signal, a turn of the page. So we've identified how we got here, and so now we're sort of turning the page. And how do we move forward? There's an election coming in just, I think, 7 or 8 weeks. So there's likely not to be any meaningful decision happening in that time, other than the council will probably approve funds for those architectural renderings, and then they'll perhaps set a time and date to consult with the public on those drawings.
Okay, I guess that leaves me to ask, what's next for your work on this project? Where do you see yourself heading? Is it just looking ahead at Fundy Engineering?
Both. I mean, I'm still working through some documents. I have identified certain topics that have come out of the documents that will need to be addressed, that were brought up throughout the previous process. My next focus is the environmental impact of that project, and sort of, because we heard people from the public say we're concerned about how this will impact the tidal flow, the shoreline, neighboring properties, fish, microorganisms that live in the ocean floor, Alistair Fox, all of those people who had come forward. We did hear from an engineering company who said that it would have minimal impact. So I'm just sort of sifting through those things, and I expect in the next couple of weeks to have something more solid to tell the public. And then obviously we're going to continue to follow Fundy Engineering and the next steps for the council and the incoming council, whoever they may be.
So the wharf saga continues, but I look forward to following your extensive work on this subject.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about Canada's Basketball Hall of Fame coming to St. Stephen.
We've had people out all through the U.S., throughout the Maritimes, Toronto, all across Canada that want to see the World's Oldest Court. And then if we have a Hall of Fame as well, that just creates that much more of a destination for us.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. We're going to St. Stephen because you got to have a conversation about basketball. But I want to start with the world's oldest basketball court, which is right in our very backyard.
Yes, it is now known as the world's oldest basketball court. They originally thought the world's oldest basketball court, and when I say that, I mean still in existence today, was in Paris. But a number of years ago, it was discovered that the court that was made in St. Stephen in the old YMCA building still existed. It was uncovered during after a fire, actually, right there on King Street. And so here it is. Suddenly, this is in by a few months, and it was the Courier. I'd like to bring that out. The Courier newspaper was the reason why they were able to establish the date of this court. So props to the Courier. I know it wasn't us, but we still carry on that legacy of having a paper of record that can date a certain item in the community, which it did, and proved that it was just months older than the court in Paris. So because of that, because of having this international status as the oldest court, Tom Liston, who many people know from the community, along with David Ganong, tons of great people from Charlotte County are behind this project to make it into an experiential museum for basketball. And I think it really highlights the fact that Canada has had such a huge role in the story of basketball, and actually the birth of basketball as a sport in general. And having this court in Canada really will make this even more, I think, known around the world, how much Canada has to do with the story of basketball itself. So yeah, now we know that the oldest court in the world is right here in St. Stephen, which they hope to attract people to when this experiential museum and sports center comes to life. I can give you an update on that too, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, this will be the first time that now the Hall of Fame for basketball comes to St. Stephen to really put some weight behind the fact that the world's oldest court is here. The Hall of Fame has now decided to step on board and bring an induction ceremony right here to the East Coast. They've only in the history of Basketball Hall of Fame has the induction ceremony been held outside of Ontario. That was once in Vancouver, and now it will be here in St. Stephen in Atlantic Canada for the first time on the East Coast. And there are plans for this to be more of a regular thing.
Wow. What a special treat for us to have here. Basketball is one of the sports that I don't know very well, but I find it very interesting. But you spoke to Tom and he gave you some details about this event and then maybe a special guest that might be coming. Can you tell me about what that
I will, and yes, so this is the excitement. Anyone who follows Canada, the world's oldest basketball court, we've been talking about this for a while, and we've had a lot of great content on it on CHCO because it's really right in our backyard, so we're able to get over there a lot. Tom Liston is a wonderful New Brunswicker. He works most of the time in Toronto these days. He's home a lot, though, so he's been a part of the world's oldest basketball court, I think, since they decided this idea could really become a reality. And it looks like construction of this center is going to begin this fall. Okay.
Wow.
Now let me get to that. Anyone who's also been following it knows for the last 5 years, the world's oldest basketball court has been putting on an event in the summer called the Archie. Now, that's after Lyman Archibald. So I'm going to bring you back to the story of the court right now. Lyman Archibald was a student of James Naismith. So basketball lovers know that the sport was invented by a Canadian in the U.S. Okay. Naismith, with Lyman Archibald under him, Lyman Archibald then was, I believe, a director at the YMCA in St. Stephen. So when he came to St. Stephen, he brought the sport with him. I think the first international game may have been played on the world's oldest basketball court too. So there's even more background on the court. If I get anything wrong, please correct me. I don't mind. I probably have forgotten a detail or two. That's the story behind the court. But the Archie happens every summer in August for the last 5 years. There's basketball camps. The big event is this golf tournament at the Algonquin Golf Course here in St. Andrews, where a lot of sports athletes and celebrities come to town and play with different groups of people. It's a fundraiser and an awareness campaign for the world's oldest court. That's what's brought. Okay, so if all of this
golf game to support a basketball game.
There you go. But I mean, golf is one of those sports I think all athletes like because you can grow old with golf. You can't grow old with every sport. So they come play golf. Happens to be that Paul Jones, who is one of the directors of Canada Basketball, has been coming. I think Paul's been every year I'm going to guess. If he's missed one, I missed him missing it. But Paul Jones, who is a director of Canada Basketball, has been a huge supporter of not only the world's oldest basketball court, but he's come to the Archie to be a part of it every year. So he's a big reason, I think, too, that it's coming here to St. Stephen, because he's experienced it already. He's not only believes the hype, he's experienced it. So yeah, it looks like this could become, too, the world's oldest basketball, and the experiential museum behind it could end up becoming a home to the Canada Basketball Hall of Fame as well for the East Coast. So they're looking at maybe in the future having a Vancouver, Toronto, and an East Coast one, and it could be right here in New Brunswick. Celebrities coming this year, though. We spoke with Tom, and he let us in on a bit of a surprise, which is anyone who might be probably my age. Well, if you grew up with Our Lady Peace, the band, and Rain Maida, who's married to Chantal Kreviatsik. Rain Maida was here last summer to golf, experienced the course, is a friend of Tom's. Now he is coming to be part of the Archie this year. To give you an idea that it isn't just sports celebrities that come out. So yeah, everyone's getting very excited, but to have the induction ceremony here, they've moved the Archie a week. It's usually mid-August, so the induction ceremony will be August 20th. I believe in St. Stephen, and then the Archie golf tournament itself will be the Saturday that weekend. The 20th is a Thursday, so it's going to be, again, a few days of just everything basketball with a little golf in between.
Perfect. That sounds like a great time to me. I would hope, though, that maybe he brings all of Our Lady Peace with him.
You never know.
That might be fun.
He could bring Chantal. There's a lot that's possible. I think a lot
We have an amphitheater.
There's a lot that could happen.
There's a lot that could happen.
But the most exciting thing about this is it shows that the hype of the world's oldest basketball court is really hitting across the board. Canada's paying attention. I think internationally they're really paying attention now. And because of this, because of events like the Archie, Tom said, we're going to be able to start putting this together. Funding the fundraising campaign that they've been on for this big $18 million fundraising campaign they've had to do. He said they're getting towards the end of it, and it looks like it's time to take those Cambridge 7, that's the design firm that is behind it, and they're known for their sports centers and museums. It looks like St. Stephen is going to be entering this next serious chapter of being a sports tourism destination, and that's going to happen just next fall. Here is a part of my interview with Tom Liston about the world's oldest basketball court in St. Stephen.
We think there are going to be some exciting inductees this year, because I think it's about a 3 or 4 year window that they have to be retired. And if you look, as I was sort of alluding to, there's more and more Canadians in the NBA, more and more women that have played in Olympics and overseas, and they're a few years out of retirement. And these are folks that would have played with LeBron James and won NBA titles, and it's going to be a pretty exciting class, I think. So we're really excited about those, and they're obviously going to be flown in and be part of the Archie as well. And our initial conversations, we think they will all come for the 3-on-3 and youth clinic on the Saturday as well. They'll stay for the whole event and participate in the community events as well. And we're really excited about having these recently inductees being able to coach your 12-year-old girl right after they, a day after they've been inducted into the Canadian Basketball Hall of Fame. So that's part of the excitement, is to bring all these folks in the community and embrace it.
I should ask while I have the chance to talk to you about both. What can we expect for the Archie this year? Are there any new additions to the roster of events?
So we will slightly reorder because of Canada Basketball being such a prominent thing. So we moved it a week later than we normally would have it. We're having it August 20th to 22nd. We'll have the induction ceremony on Thursday night. So usually you have more of a VIP and intro session with the celebrities on a Thursday night. So we'll have that as our main gala dinner. It'll be slightly more formal, but still as much fun as ever. And then golf will continue to be on Friday. And then we'll take our Maritime Kitchen Party up another level this year. So the events will be similar, but will be much bigger because of the impact of Canada Basketball. We know we'll sell out, so we're going to figure out how to create bigger venues for all these things and create more accessibility, because it's so exciting. And the Premier has said that she will come down for the event this year, so that'll be exciting. We have a number of MPs and MLAs and a lot of other special guests, so stay tuned. But we plan to make it we want to make it such that they will always want to return, and we be the default that hosts the Hall of Fame. And there'll be other cities that will host the Hall of Fame depending on who gets inducted, but we always want to be the default choice for Canada basketball.
That was Tom Liston from the world's oldest basketball court.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to take a look at 2 fundraisers in the community.
Well, I would say I was just doing last month's figures, and that will feed half our clients for a month. So it's amazing. We're just absolutely thrilled.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth. We are going to take a look right now at a couple of fundraising efforts. We know that Charlotte County does well when it comes to fundraisers for neighbors looking out for neighbors. I actually had the chance, though, to go up to the Algonquin earlier this week on Tuesday to talk to Cole Sheridan, the general manager, about a donation they were making that I think a lot of people in the community remember from Christmas time when the Algonquin brought back the Festival of Trees. We went up there a couple of times to experience the magic of Christmas at the Algonquin. While it was beautiful, it also was a fundraiser for the local food bank known as the Open Door Program. So any business or organization that wanted to sponsor a tree did so by I think there was a fee to sponsor and decorate a tree, and the winner of the best decorated tree got a great prize as well. But through that, they were able to come up with $7,000 in funding to go to our local food bank.
So I guess, why did they do that this year? I know that they didn't. I don't think did they do it last year? Like, how did this come back to tradition?
I think it's just one of those things in St. Andrews that I think the pandemic too, a lot of things lost favor, but it's just something that was resurrected this year under the new ownership and new management. They thought it was nice to get back involved in a lot of the ways the Algonquin has been a part of the fabric of the whole community, not just the visitors that come and stay there. So it's a great way for, I think they wanted to also have the public come up, the locals come up and wander the halls of the Algonquin and check out the trees. But really behind that was the idea that we can give back to people in the community as well. So I got to speak to Cole Sheridan, the general manager, about why this was an important initiative for them to get behind. Here's my interview with Cole.
So we were thrilled to launch the Festival of Trees. Many that have been in St. Andrews for a while probably remember it. We used to have something similar, but we relaunched it this year for the first time in many years, and it was a resounding success. We couldn't have been more happy. We were very fortunate that our partners at Kingsbury also were quite generous, as well as 7 or 8 other local businesses. Of course, in future years, we are excited for it to grow, but because of that, we're able to make a donation to the Open Door Food Program of $7,000, and it really aligns sort of with our larger Invest, our ownership group. It's a big focus of ours, supporting food insecurity across Canada. So in every community we're in, we do our very best to come to the table, so to speak, and support our community. And we're just thrilled to be here on such a beautiful day too.
Why was it so important to get so involved with the community as soon as really becoming the owners of the Algonquin for Invest?
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows, and many people probably heard me say it before, but, we know the Algonquin is an important piece of fabric in the community, in the local community, and the wider region. We have an opportunity to do good. Everybody who's in this building wants to do good. It's, something that we're very focused on for our associates, for our employees to be able to give back to the community, many of them who've been here many, many years. And it's just something that we want to make sure, we ask everybody in town to support us, and we want to support them in turn. And I think this has been a very successful way to do it.
That was my interview with Cole Sheridan, general manager of the Algonquin Resort. Now, the Open Door Program was on site to receive the check. So Chris Costello and Julie Haynes of the Open Door Program spoke with us as well. They talked about the need in the community, and what you will hear from them I think really drives home why initiatives like this can play a critical role in us taking care of everyone in our community. Here is my interview with Chris Costello and Julie Haynes from the Open Door Program in St. Andrews.
Well, I would say I was just doing last month's figures, and that will feed half our clients for a month. So it's amazing. We're just absolutely thrilled.
And tell us a little bit, Chris, about what you're going through this year as we all see food prices go up around the globe. What does that mean for our community and the people with food security issues?
I think this gift means a lot. Canadians are very generous, and we're going through something right now where we're going to see prices go up because of the rising cost of fuel. That's kind of normal. The whole world is experiencing this, but in our particular community, there's a number of people that we basically feed about 230 mouths a month. So you can see that. These are just regular people that are trying to make ends meet. So any gift like this, truly appreciated, and we'll be helping more. We'll see more people coming to us in the near future.
And on that note, exactly, Chris, have you seen this year in particular a growth in the number of people who need help? And can you, for people at home, explain a little bit about what you've noticed and what you think that signifies?
Yes, we can, I think, The numbers keep going up every month.
Oh, the numbers keep going up. I am there every month, and I register new clients. Last month, it was 6 new clients, and there was a couple of months ago, 13. So it's increasing so much more than it used to, because I've been there right from the beginning, and we'd get maybe 1 or 2 clients a month, but now, the price of groceries, people just can't afford it.
That was Julie Haynes and Chris Costello from the Open Door program here in St. Andrews. When you hear those numbers, it really does drive home just how imperative having our own fundraisers are in the community when there's that much need.
Community stepping up for community is very important, and there's not a lot of places that we know that aren't touched by a bit of struggle, whether that's buying your groceries, paying your bills, or even with your health, which was the other fundraiser that we sort of got tipped off to. I was at a council meeting, a regular council meeting in St. Andrews, and Councillor Annette Harland, who is a member of the Wellness Committee, complimented Councillor Gummichel, on his Goggins Challenge. Now, at that time, I didn't know what a Goggins Challenge was, but they politely told me that a Goggins Challenge is 4 miles, or if you're Canadian, 6.4 kilometers every 4 hours for 48 hours. So it's an endurance thing where you run for, I think, about 77 kilometers in total if you're Canadian. And it was created by David Goggins, a U.S. Navy SEAL who wanted to sort of test his physical limits and his mental ones as well.
Okay, wow. And they are using the funds raised from the Goggins Challenge to fund what in the community?
So that's exactly it. So the Wellness Committee was formed quite recently about creating, a supportive and inclusive environment, especially around, healthy living, but also mental health. And you and I would have talked about the ASSIST training that had been put on. I think you wrote a story about that. And it's applied suicide intervention skills training, and so these people, are provided the skills that they need to intervene when someone is feeling extremely difficult, and so but that is expensive. It's $200 per person. The first training session took in 23 people of a variety of backgrounds, and so Councillor Gummichel and his Goggins Challenge individual, Victoria McGuire, who is a co-owner of McGuire's Chocolate, were able to raise a little over $2,000 for the Wellness Committee, which they hope will allow them to put on an ASSIST training program in the fall.
A member of our board here at CHCO, Jay Reamer, actually took part in that first round of ASSIST training that the Fundy Community Foundation had covered the costs of. I think it was 23 people, you said, in the community that are now equipped to be better citizens. Really, the idea of the ASSIST training is that it equips regular people with the ability to be there for people who might be experiencing suicidal thoughts, who might reach out to them, and they will be able to have that proper training in place to know how to handle those situations. So the more people that are able to be sensitive and aware of what to do when someone is maybe showing signs of having suicidal thoughts or ideas, can be very beneficial to a small community, especially small communities too, where isolation, loneliness, even clickiness can be issues, right? So I look forward to seeing this come to light with another session of people getting this training. We had Gary Brown in from Operation White Heart. So if you've seen those white hearts around in the community, he was here with Kaylee Dunfield from the Wellness Committee when that first round of assist training came out. So anyone who wants to learn more about it, I suggest going to, it might still be in circulation on television, but if you go to our YouTube page, you can find an interview with Kaylee Dunfield and Gary Brown that really gets into the details over 25 minutes about what assist training is and how we can all benefit from it. And Gary, who is the founder of Operation White Heart, who does through his own initiative fund assist training throughout the province, said that he's had the assist training and he's used it multiple times. That really hit me to know that, because you think about it, sometimes when people are experiencing things like suicidal thoughts, you don't necessarily go to a doctor or a clinic. You might tell someone you love. And so the more people that are equipped to know how to handle it, I think it also helps people be more compassionate too, in a way, to realize that your everyday encounters can have an effect on people, whether that means they open up to you, or whether just being someone who exudes that kind of compassion could make people feel comfortable approaching you.
Well, I talked to Councillor Steve Neal as well, who's also a member of the Wellness Committee, and he made, an interesting comparison. He said if you broke your arm, someone would come up to you and say, "Oh, what happened? How long are you going to be in a cast?" They would ask you a lot of meaningful questions about why you were injured. But when you're struggling with your mental health, you're not always going to make that known to other people, and people are not always going to ask.
Yeah.
And so he and the Wellness Committee are also working to develop a list of resources available in the area for people who want to reach out for help, but feel like they can't or don't know where to go. He said that's the largest barrier typically to people, is that they just don't know where to go. And that problem is uniquely acute in rural areas because we're not really service hubs in that sense, and our healthcare system is obviously a bit difficult to navigate at the moment. But both of them were super appreciative of the efforts of Councillor Gumashel and Victoria. And what I found was really interesting about Victoria is she talked about the process of running 4 miles every 4 hours, this extensive loop around St. Andrews, all while taking care of one of her children who had gotten sick, and her mother-in-law and her husband running the store, getting a few hours of sleep in between. But the last thing she said to me was, the community really stepped up, both people who showed a passion for running, but also just wanted to support them. Some people ran alongside them for a certain number of miles. So I think someone even did 3/4 of the Goggins Challenge, but then had to go to do something else. But the most important thing that she said to me was that she was doing it for her mom, who lost her ability to walk due to illness, and she said it's a privilege to be able to do this. It's a privilege to be able to run. And so she was doing that for herself because she was testing her own physical and mental limits, but she was doing it for her mom, and she was doing it for all of the people who are going to ultimately benefit from the assist training that they could receive in the fall.
Well, great work, Councillor Gumashel and Victoria McGuire. Now, Victoria McGuire was on Good Day from the Bay last year with her husband, Mark McGuire. They won McGuire Chocolate here in town. And Victoria is very big in the ALS Society, too. And she had Jonathan Britton and I from Good Day from the Bay do an ALS Ice Bucket Challenge on television. And it was a wonderful, fun experience, but obviously rooted in making sure that we are not only aware, but raising money for things that still have no cure or need hope. And so really beautiful community to live in when you need to be inspired.
If you or someone you know is struggling, here is a list of resources.
welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. So we have a few things on the agenda next week. The provincial budget is going to happen on Monday, so we're going to have a bigger picture of what the government's priorities will be for 2026, 27, where those cuts that we've been hearing about for months are going to come from. We have some sort of suspected ideas, but we'll never know until the finance minister delivers his speech in the House.
And I know you will be talking on him one-on-one as well, so I'm sure anything that they don't get to, you will make sure.
Well, and there are certainly things down here that are of priority to folks down here. Blacks Harbour's Water, the St. Andrew's Wellness Clinic, all of these things are sort of coming up to fruition, and the provincial government needs to play a very critical role. And we just saw in Eastern Charlotte they had to cancel a childcare building tender because the provincial government has scaled back funding according to Eastern Charlotte. So we're working on that as well.
Yes, if you thought that we didn't touch on that story this week, we're getting to it next week. You saw the full council meeting on CHCO on Tuesday night, but we will be unpacking it on this show next week. So that's something for people to know too. If we don't get to it, it doesn't mean we're not getting to it.
Well, the important thing to know is that when things are said by one level of government or by someone, I have to reach out to that individual to afford them the opportunity to respond and to provide the information that they have about what has happened, right? Why did you reduce your portion of the funding? Why is it $500,000 instead of what you originally committed? So we've done that. We've gone to the federal government to ask them if there's any wiggle room on their side, but we've also gone to the provincial government for an explanation on why they reduced it sort of post-tender results.
I was going to talk about what I'm doing next week, but I think it might be more important to introduce everyone at home for the end of the show to our third co-host. Come up here, Bill. Come up. Look who's behind the desk. Every single. Come on up. We're going to let you up. There she is. There she is. So we thought we'd like to show you that Maud is always behind this desk. Whenever we film this show, she's sleeping right under the sign right here. Good job, Bill. You did it again.
Unfortunately for me, doesn't come to council meetings, of which there are 2 next week. So we will also be going to council. There's a few things on the agenda. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks coming through here, I think.
I want Maud's schedule next week, but I'll take mine.
She sleeps a lot of the workday and never gets questioned, so.
Somehow, morale is up, as you like to say, so she's doing her job.
That's right.
Well, thank you for joining us this week on This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.